The ocean was quiet that night. You know the kind of quiet I'm talking about, the kind that doesn't hum or echo, just rests. It rolled in and out like breath. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the cool tile floor, glass of wine in hand. It had taken me a lifetime to buy this house, but more than that, it had taken everything I had not to hand pieces of myself away, just to keep the peace. The villa sat still, almost grateful. Minimalist, sure, but not cold. Everything in here had been chosen with care. The wide windows, the soft rugs, the absence of voices. That was the point. No more noise. No more stepping around moods or dodging guilt traps disguised as questions like, "Why are you always so distant?" My phone lit up. I didn't move to grab it. These days, I let it buzz. I'd earned my silence, and I wasn't about to interrupt it for anyone. Some people are born into peace. I had to fight tooth and nail for mine. And right when I started to think maybe this version of life might last, I picked up the phone. The screen showed her name, Tawny. I thought maybe she was checking in. Maybe a harmless photo, or one of her famous "need a favor, sis" messages. But when I opened it, the words dropped like a stone in my stomach. "We're on our way. 60 guests. Get towels, food, drinks ready. Clean up after. We'll be back next week. Love ya." I stared, blinked, stared again. 60. We'll be back next week. My fingers trembled, not from rage, but from the jarring quiet that followed inside me. No punctuation, no question mark, no request, just expectation. I called, straight to voicemail. I sat down at the edge of the couch, phone still in hand, as if rereading it would change the tone. Maybe there was more to the message. Maybe she meant something else. No. I'd seen this before. Different place, different year, same sister. I was the quiet one. The helper. The one who knew how to set a table without being asked, how to let things go for the sake of family. That's how it always starts, with a key. Months ago, she'd come to visit. Stood by the front gate, hands full of overpacked bags, and that signature smile like she was already owed something. "You should give me a spare key, just in case. Earthquakes, you know?" I'd hesitated, but the way she wrapped her arms around me, the way she said, "You're the best, sis. You always come through," made me hand it over. Truth is, I didn't give her a key. I gave her a way in. To everything. Spare keys in the wrong hands are more dangerous than loaded guns. And I knew that. I knew. I just didn't want to believe it would happen again. It wasn't betrayal that made my chest tighten. It was that familiar voice inside whispering, "You expected this." The second buzz came 5 minutes later. This time, it wasn't her. A friend. Short text. "Hey, isn't that your house?" I clicked the link. Instagram. Tawny's story, loud music, a DJ, red Solo cups, bodies in the pool. Her voice cutting through it all. "Welcome to our oceanfront escape. My sister's so sweet. She insisted we use it." Not my name. Not a thank you. Not a hint that this place belonged to me. Then a shout in the background. "Free bar, thanks, Tawny." They were laughing in my home, wearing shoes on my rugs, eating on my deck. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Something inside me simply went quiet, like a door shutting. This wasn't just an invasion. This was erasure. I stood up, didn't say a word, walked into the kitchen. My hands found the towel, the one with my mother's initials, DM, stitched in soft blue. I folded it slowly, neatly, with both hands. "She may have taken the house," I said out loud, "just once. But she's never touching the name on this towel." Outside, the ocean was still calm. The villa was still standing, but something in me had shifted. I stepped outside, barefoot again. The air had cooled, and the pathstones felt sharper than they had that afternoon. I moved slowly toward the front gate, that old iron frame I'd barely touched since I moved in. It had stayed open, always. I told myself it was for deliveries or for the occasional neighbor. But truth was, it was for her. The lock clicked heavier than I remembered, and in that moment, it wasn't just about the lock. It was about what it meant to close something, to say, without apology, that a boundary now existed. Locking a gate doesn't stop people like Tawny. She doesn't need permission, she needs silence. I stood there for another few seconds, watching the lights flicker inside my home. They looked different from out here. Softer. Almost like I wasn't sure if I still belonged to them. My hands trembled. Not out of fear, but because it was the first time in years that I didn't offer an open door. And when the guilt tried to creep in, I caught it by the throat. No, not this time. I walked back in slowly, the house greeting me like a stranger. I didn't touch anything at first, just stood in the entryway, like someone surveying a place they used to live in before the war. The aftermath was quiet, not peaceful, just quiet, the kind that comes after everyone's taken what they wanted and left. Sand had crusted the edges of the hardwood floors. Towels, still wet, were draped across the armchairs like forgotten laundry. Empty bottles, champagne, vodka, maybe more, lined the kitchen island, a few knocked over. My villa didn't smell like itself. No cedar, no lavender, just sweat, perfume, and something sticky I didn't want to identify. A pair of shoes, pink wedges, sat by the door. Someone had left them, or maybe just didn't care enough to take them. In the reading nook, a single high heel had wedged itself beneath the cushion where I used to drink coffee and read before sunrise. My mother's antique desk, the one I spent months restoring, was now stained with water rings and a red Solo cup outline. They didn't just use the house, they rebranded it. The living room had been rearranged, chairs pulled toward the windows, a backdrop set up by the fireplace, one of my art pieces removed. It looked staged, like a set. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything. I just stood in the middle of what was mine and felt the absence of myself in it. I moved slowly to my bedroom. The light was still on, and that's when I saw it. The red dress. The one I bought after I got my first real raise. I hadn't even worn it. I'd kept it wrapped in plastic, tucked to the back of my closet. Something for a dinner I never made time for, or a celebration I'd never been invited to. Now, it lay sprawled across the bed, wrinkled, lipstick stained. The plastic covering crumpled on the floor like garbage. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. Tag from Tawny's Instagram. A photo. My red dress, now draped on one of her friends, posing by the pool. Caption: "Somebody's gotta wear it before it goes out of style." I didn't scream, didn't throw the phone. I just went still. I felt like a museum exhibit, standing there while tourists touched everything I once protected. It wasn't about the dress, it was about what it meant. That dress was supposed to be a symbol of effort, of milestones, of proving to myself that I had made it. And now it was content. It was a prop. They hadn't just taken over my house. They'd taken over moments I hadn't lived yet. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The phone buzzed again. Another message. "Hey, can you clean it up before Friday? The girls loved the space. We might shoot a promo next week. Love ya." That was it. That was the line. Not the party. Not the shoes. Not the dress. That line, she wrecked it, renamed it, and now I was the janitor. I didn't answer. Didn't move. Just closed my eyes and let the weight of it press against my ribs like a stone too big to cough up. My mother used to say something when I was younger. After family barbecues where we stayed behind to do the dishes while others laughed on the porch, she'd whisper it in my ear. "Some people will love what you build, only until they can live in it rent-free." I hadn't understood it then. I understood it now. This wasn't about the villa. Not really. It was about the story they told about me, and how I was always written out of it. I stood up again. Not out of anger, but decision. Walked to the kitchen. Pulled open the bottom drawer near the far wall, the one I labeled for later. Inside, manila folders, paperwork, receipts, copies of contracts, things I told myself I'd sort eventually. I pulled out the folder marked House Legal. Trembling fingers. And something new in my chest. This wasn't a housewarming party. It was a warning shot. I woke on the couch with a sore neck and the kind of ache you don't stretch out. My bedroom door had stayed closed all night. I couldn't walk back in there. Not yet. The air inside the villa felt heavier than it had the night before, like the walls were trying to forget what had happened but couldn't quite manage it. I pulled back the curtain in the living room. The sun was already high enough to catch the shine off the water outside, but the inside of the house didn't feel warm. It felt stale, cold in that way you only notice when something once familiar turns foreign. There were still champagne corks on the hallway floor. Someone's bikini top was balled up under a planter near the glass doors. I found one of my serving trays cracked and stuffed beneath the couch like it had been used for something it was never made for. Footprints led from the back deck straight through the living room, dried and muddy. They hadn't just celebrated in my house, they had marked it. I stepped around the wreckage like I didn't live here, like I was walking through a stranger's home, trying not to touch anything, trying not to feel too much. Outside on the lawn, something caught my eye, the chair, the one from my mother. Weathered oak, curved arms. She used to sit in it on Sundays, folding laundry with one hand and sipping iced tea with the other. I hadn't let anyone use it. I kept it in the reading nook by the back window, like a shrine that didn't need flowers. It was lying on its side in the grass. I didn't need to ask how it got there. They probably needed space for the DJ booth, I muttered out loud, though no one was around to hear it. My knees gave a little as I walked toward it. I didn't cry. I just bent down, picked it up slowly, and stood there staring at it for a while. The legs had scuff marks now, a deep scrape along the back rail. They didn't just move furniture, they moved roots. That chair was never just wood. It was a reminder of what quiet looked like before the noise. I brought it back inside, but something about it felt off, like it no longer belonged in the spot I had always kept it, so I just set it against the wall for now and walked away. In the hallway, I passed the drawer by the front door. I stopped, opened it, and there it was. The keychain I had given Tawny. Blue envelope. Folded note still inside. Only in emergencies. Back then, she smiled, held it up like it was a prize, and said, "You always trust the right people." I remember feeling weird even as I handed it over. But it was Tawny, and Tawny always had a way of making doubt sound like disrespect. I told myself it was harmless, just a spare, just in case. That wasn't a key. That was a contract I hadn't read. I hadn't given her permission. I had given her access, and that was different. I picked up the keychain. It still smelled like her perfume, sweet, floral, sharp at the end. Next time, I thought, I'll give the key to someone who knows how to knock. I didn't slam the drawer shut. I just closed it. Then I started collecting trash bags, rubber gloves, a playlist I didn't turn on. I began bagging what they left behind. Heels, sunglasses, swimsuits, crumpled flyers from whatever promo they were trying to film. I worked without pausing, not because I was numb, but because I needed control of something again. Halfway through, I found a handwritten note shoved under the guest room pillow. "Thanks for letting us crash here. Your sister's amazing." That was the one that cracked something open. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. They believed her. They lived in her story. And I had been quiet long enough to make that version stick. I tossed the note into the bag, tied it off, and opened my laptop. Every photo from the mess, every text, every receipt. I created folders, labeled them, time-stamped them. "If she wanted to pretend this wasn't mine," I whispered, "then I'll show her what ownership looks like." That night, I washed a single wine glass, the one I hadn't touched in 2 days. I dried it with the towel embroidered with my mother's initials, DM, the one I had folded in Chapter 1. I set it beside the chair, not on the table, not by the window, just beside the chair, like it was waiting to be claimed again. Then I opened my phone, tapped into my encrypted note app, typed the first line. "Evidence log. She thought I'd clean. I'm documenting." My phone rang just as I was setting the kettle down. It was my Aunt Jean. Her voice was as light as ever, too light. "I thought you offered the place to Tawny for her content shoot?" she asked, genuine confusion in her tone. I didn't answer right away. She kept going. "I mean, that's what Tawny said in her video. It was all so beautifully done. You should be proud." There it was. She'd rewritten it already, and she'd done it first. I hung up gently, then stared at my reflection in the kettle. They weren't just trespassing anymore. They were publishing a story I never agreed to star in. I scrolled through Tawny's Instagram. Comments poured in beneath a clip of her posing in front of my fireplace. "Your sister's so lucky to have you. You deserve that space. She's such a giver." One caption, under a post of her holding a champagne glass like she was toasting the horizon, read, "We rise by lifting family." No mention of me, not once. It was always her voice first. Her version first, her truth, which had little to do with reality, but everything to do with reach. It reminded me of being 12, our shared bedroom, her sleepovers. Tawny would push the beds together and string up lights, call it our space. And I would sleep on the floor because guests needed the mattress. Back then, I thought that's just how family worked. Now I saw it for what it was. "Somewhere along the way, family stopped meaning connection," I murmured. "It started meaning compliance, and I complied. Until I didn't. The lie stung. But what hurt worse was how easily people believed it, how quickly they ran with the version that painted me as selfish, cold, ungrateful. They saw my silence and mistook it for guilt. Or worse, agreement. This wasn't about a party anymore. It was about a narrative, and I was being written out. I opened the family group chat. Photos, hearts, emojis. Tawny had posted a selfie, her with two of our cousins on my porch. Caption: "Thanks to my little sister for always supporting my dreams." I hadn't replied, but my lack of reply had been absorbed into her story. The silence had become a signature at the bottom of a contract I never signed. One of my uncles chimed in, "She's just too sensitive. It's just a house." I stared at the screen. If it was just a house, why did I skip vacations for 6 years? Why did I drive 4 hours after work to meet contractors? Why did I sleep on a mattress on the floor for 8 months while saving for the down payment? People say just a house, the same way they say just a dog or just a job. To me, it wasn't just a house. It was the first time I built something where no one else had their fingerprints on it. I opened my laptop, not to argue, but to start. I drafted a document titled "The Real Story." No flourish, just facts. The closing date, the mortgage summary, screenshots of text messages, photos of receipts and timelines of when Tawny used the villa. I wrote one paragraph that wasn't fact, but truth. This house wasn't gifted. It was built. Brick by boundary, window by weekend alone. I gave no permission. I printed it, folded it in thirds, slipped it into the back of my old poetry journal. Not for anyone to read. Just so that something in this house held my version. Not out of revenge. Out of authorship. And then I made the mistake of checking her page again. "We're back this weekend," she'd posted. "Hope the place is reset. Can't wait to make more memories." My hand didn't shake. I didn't call her. I opened the group chat. Typed one word. "No." Then I closed my laptop. No explanation. No clarification. Just a word I'd never let myself say before. I woke to the scent of stale wine and coconut body spray embedded deep in the couch cushions. I hadn't slept well. Not because of noise, there wasn't any, but because the silence no longer felt like mine. It felt borrowed, almost haunted. The kind that lingers when you're still surrounded by ghosts, only now they're invisible. I tried to sit upright. My spine resisted. The stiffness in my neck was nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. It wasn't grief anymore. It was fatigue of the soul. I stood slowly and walked past the entryway mirror. I looked like someone who lived through a break-in and stayed. The house had been cleaned, by me, but only on the surface. There were still marks, scratches on the table legs, smudges on the baseboards. I reached for a sponge earlier but couldn't remember if I ever used it. In the office, I found a peach someone had bitten once, then left on a coaster by the window. Next to it, a cocktail napkin smeared with mascara. They had laughed here, taken photos here, tagged their locations. Meanwhile, I had been dissolving like steam behind the scenes. "I didn't lose a house," I whispered. "I lost the version of me that lived in it." That version, the one who saved up years for this place, who cut back on every indulgence, who worked overtime without complaint. She was gone, and I wasn't sure I could summon her back. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. Later, I found a package sitting on the mat. I assumed it was something from the cleaning supply subscription I forgot to cancel. Instead, it was a letter from the county clerk's office. My first thought, taxes. My second thought, fine, one more thing to fix. I opened it casually, ripped it from the top, walked toward the kitchen counter while scanning the contents. It wasn't about taxes. It was a business registration. Tawny Living Co., under my address, filed 2 weeks ago. Registered owner, Tawny Marcel. Purpose, lifestyle brand, coaching, empowerment. I reread the form, once, twice, 3 times. At some point, I realized I was holding my breath. She hadn't just borrowed the house, she claimed it. She didn't visit. She colonized. I stood still for a long time, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I knew exactly what this was. She hadn't made a mistake. She had made a move. I opened my laptop, pulled up the county's public database, and started digging. Everything matched. Her email, my address, her signature. I started printing. Every page, cross-referencing dates and screenshots I'd archived. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was preparing. That evening, I sat at the dining table my mother gave me years ago. It still had scratches from when she dropped a teapot on it during a heated Thanksgiving. She didn't apologize, just laughed and said, "It adds character." That table had seen everything, and now it would see this. I opened my journal. Wrote at the top, what they took. But then I scratched it out. I wrote, what I won't let them have. I remembered a line my mother used to repeat like gospel. It's not what they take, it's what you refuse to lose. For a long time, I thought she meant material things, heirlooms, homes. But now I knew better. What I refused to lose was my dignity, my voice, my place. I started writing a letter to my lawyer, no anger in it, just facts, bullet points, dates, evidence. I didn't use exclamation marks. I didn't curse. I didn't beg. This isn't revenge, I wrote at the bottom. This is reclamation, and I'm done apologizing for it. Afterward, I walked to my bedroom, pulled out the old bottle of wine I had kept sealed since the day I bought the villa. It was supposed to be opened for something special. It had been opened already, empty now, smudged with lipstick, abandoned on the floor behind the TV stand. There was a note taped to it when I bought it. Open only when it feels like home. I peeled the torn paper from the neck of the bottle, sat on the floor, and just stared at it. I had built this house so I could finally hear myself think, and now all I could hear was a sentence I hadn't said out loud. She wanted content. I stood up, opened my encrypted folder, uploaded every screenshot, every invoice, every photo, set permissions, lawyer, county registrar, backup server, watch the sync bar load, bit by bit, proof by proof. Then, one more click. The screen flashed. Sync complete. She wanted content, I said aloud, folding the empty bottle into a box marked legal. I'm about to give her the real story. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The sky was low, thick with that heavy kind of cloud cover that made you forget what season it was. I stared out past the rail, not really watching anything, just holding that silence in my chest like a stone I couldn't swallow. It had been 2 days since I typed it into the family group chat. Just one word. No, not a sentence, not a speech, not a rant or a polite declination. Just no. And since then, nothing. No phone calls, no questions, no tantrums, no checking in, just nothing. But that nothing was louder than any fight we'd ever had. They didn't need to raise their voices, just disappear long enough for you to wonder if you were overreacting, long enough to make you second-guess the line you finally drew. When we were kids, if I ever said no to anything, sharing a bed, giving up the last piece of pie, letting Tawny borrow my clothes, there'd be a silence that wrapped around me like punishment. I'd always cave, just to get the noise back. But now I was grown. Now I was tired. And this time, the silence was mine to keep. I didn't delete the message, didn't send another. I just left it there, floating in that group thread like a brick in a swimming pool. and I sat with it. Let myself feel the discomfort of becoming the selfish one. Let myself imagine what the texts must look like between them now. Let myself be misunderstood on purpose. It's strange. When you finally say no, you don't just lose your old role. You lose the illusion that people ever truly saw you outside of it. Still on the porch, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. Tawny's newest post was a group shot. Everyone smiling, drinks in hand, lounging on the patio of my villa like it was their birthright. Caption: grateful to all the friends who came, and to my sister for being so generous. Sometimes quiet hearts are the most supportive. I stared at it. The shame didn't come first this time. It was something uglier, something I didn't want to name. The comments rolled in. Such a beautiful gathering. You're so lucky to have each other. She's clearly your biggest fan. But I hadn't clapped. I hadn't smiled. I hadn't even known they were coming. She's not lying, I whispered. She's reframing. And people love frames that look like love. Praise as weapon, politeness as silencing. Apologies sent into the wind just loud enough for others to hear, but never loud enough for you. I opened the comment box, typed something, deleted it, typed again, deleted it again. It wasn't about the record, it was about the rules of engagement. I wasn't going to let her decide how I responded. I closed the app and opened my journal. New page, title, the version of me they refused to see. I made a list, times I said yes when I meant no, holidays I hosted without help, family dinners I paid for in full, loans never repaid, photos I took but was never in. I didn't need anyone to read it. I needed to see it. I remembered what my old therapist once said when I told her I didn't feel heard in my own family. Sometimes healing doesn't look like joy. It looks like not explaining yourself. I didn't owe them context. I owed myself consistency. That evening, I was doing dishes when my phone buzzed again. Blocked number. Message preview only showed 2 lines. I don't know if this is my place, but I saw what happened. I unlocked it. It was Zadie. We hadn't spoken in years. She used to be close with Tawny in college, but they'd drifted. She'd been at the party. The message continued. She told people you begged her to use the villa. Then she laughed about it. I'm sorry. I read it twice. Then again, I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel rage. What I felt was something closer to relief, like the world had tilted back into a place I could stand on again. I texted back, "Thank you." That means more than you know. It wasn't about believing myself. It was about knowing someone else had seen it too. That night, I walked through the house with the lights off. The ocean hummed low through the window screens. I carried my mother's folded towel in one hand, didn't check my phone again, didn't wait for a call that wasn't coming. I sat down in the chair I had brought back inside, folded the towel across my lap. The silence they gave me used to sting. Tonight, it felt like mine. The sun was low by the time I pulled the dining chairs back from the table. They scraped across the tile, a sound I used to hate. Now it steadied me. The table looked like a war room. Folders, receipts, a printed map of my bank statements with highlights in yellow and red. I had laid out every piece like evidence in a trial, and in many ways, that's exactly what it had become. My grief had gone quiet. My hands, however, were busy. I sorted through screenshots of texts, DMs, stories, and posts. I labeled every folder, chronological, financial, legal, emotional, each one sharper than the last. If they wanted to treat me like a ghost, I whispered, I'd haunt them legally. I created a final folder, clear plastic, labeled in black marker. Deed, dignity, documentation. Then I opened my banking app. I had meant to cancel a cleaning service subscription that I no longer needed, but instead, something else caught my eye. A charge. $1,300. Event catering. 3 days ago. My name. I sat still, just still. It wasn't just my house anymore. It was my credit, my identity, my signature, my name being passed around like an open bar tab. The receipt was under my name, my routing number, my address. She'd done it again. No heads up, no apology, no shame. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the laptop. I just took a screenshot, printed it, and slid it into the financial folder. Then I called my lawyer. Left a calm, 5-sentence voicemail. This is just a documentation update. Please confirm you've received all shared files. I'll forward one more set tonight. I hung up. And then it hit me. I wasn't surprised anymore. Not stunned. Not betrayed. Just done. Later that evening, while trying to upload files into my backup drive, my phone buzzed with a group message from the family chat. One of my cousins, "Why can't you just be proud of her? She's building a brand." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then Tawny chimed in. "She never liked people anyway. This is just her way of proving a point, like she always does." It wasn't the words that stung. It was how easily they said them in front of everyone. How no one questioned them. How silence from the rest of the group validated them all. A weaponized half-truth. She didn't say I was a monster. She didn't have to. Just not a people person. Just always proving a point. I used to want them to understand me. Now I just wanted them to witness what was coming next. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled out a small lockbox. Inside, the original villa deed. My mother's notarized will, and a note in her handwriting. If you ever need to remind someone what's yours, don't raise your voice, just raise the paperwork. I printed a copy of the deed and placed it in a new folder. No bold fonts, no underlining, just the truth, quiet and sharp. I didn't rehearse a speech, didn't plan a grand confrontation. I just texted a few names, a few relatives. "Oh, come by Saturday morning, 10 a.m., coffee's on." Nothing dramatic, no emotion, just logistics. That night, I sat at the table, folders stacked, everything labeled, and the house so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. I opened my laptop, typed one message to Tawny. "This Saturday, 10 a.m., my house. Bring your truth." Then I shut the screen. "She's brought guests into my home," I whispered. "It's time I welcome her into the facts." Saturday morning came dressed in a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in weeks. No buzzing notifications, no new lies uploaded in pastel filters. Just me, in my house. With everything I needed laid out on the coffee table like an exhibit. Deed, bank charges, screenshots, voicemails. I didn't set the place like it was for guests. I set it like it was mine again. Windows open, fresh cut lemons in a bowl, lavender oil in the diffuser, clean, not for them, for me. At the center of the table, I placed one wine glass. Underneath it, my mother's embroidered towel. The same one I folded the day I stopped being quiet. It wasn't revenge, it was retrieval, and I was ready to be seen. At 9:58, they arrived. Tawny, of course, walking ahead like the camera was on. Behind her, two of our cousins, Marla and Tyson, and one neighbor I didn't recognize, holding a tray of something she probably thought would soften the mood. They walked in like it was a brunch. "Morning," Marla chirped, handing me a pastry box. "Peace offering." Tyson gave me a weak smile. Tawny hugged the neighbor. Her voice was smooth, casual. "I just wanted us all to reset, like adults." Before I could respond, the neighbor turned to me and smiled. "You must be the house manager. Tawny said you were amazing at keeping this place up." The room froze. My chest didn't tighten. Not this time. No sting. Just that sharp, clean clarity you get when something clicks into place. "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "I'm the owner, and I don't clean for guests who weren't invited." The pastry box suddenly felt heavy in Marla's hands. Tawny laughed, light and breathy. "Oh, babe, that was a misunderstanding. You never said I couldn't use it." I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up a folder and handed it to her. Inside, dates, bank statements, screenshots of text messages, the event invoice charged to my card. She opened it, eyes scanning fast. Her smile tightened, but didn't fall, yet. "Oh, so now we're airing family stuff in front of everyone?" she said, voice rising. "What happened to loyalty? What happened to keeping things in-house?" I stayed seated. Then, I pulled out another document and read aloud. "Owner, Tawny Marcel. Registered address, 19 Coral Vista Lane." Tyson blinked. Marla looked between us. The neighbor shifted her weight. "You registered your business to her house?" Tyson asked, quiet. Tawny's lips parted. It's not like I was moving in, it was just paperwork. Her voice cracked. The first visible fracture. I didn't push, I didn't need to. Instead, I pulled out my phone, tapped the voicemail app, and played the message on speaker. It was from the cleaning company. Cold, direct. We will not be returning. The guests were disrespectful, the damage excessive, and the host was absent. Staff were spoken to like property. We have blacklisted the address. Tawny's face flushed. I mean, that's your version, she said, voice louder now, arms moving. Everyone's got one. I leaned forward slightly. No, there's my version, and then there's the receipts. I picked up the clear folder with the deed inside, not to wave it, not to flaunt it, just to hold it, like an anchor. You walked into my home, I said, took over my life, told your story with my space as the backdrop. The room was quiet, not out of guilt, out of exposure. Tawny tried one more time. That voice she used when she was caught but still spinning. You're really kicking me out over a misunderstanding? I stood, walked to the front door, and opened it. This wasn't a misunderstanding, I said. It was your final warning. They walked out in silence, and when the last foot crossed the threshold, I closed the door. Soft, but final. The first thing I noticed was the quiet, not the sharp, anxious silence that fills a room when something's wrong, but the kind that stretches gently across the floorboards, the kind that waits for you instead of accusing you. I woke up in my own bed for the first time since it all began. No noise, no dread, no weight pressing against my ribs like a hidden grudge. The light came in soft through the blinds. I stood barefoot on the tile, walked into the kitchen, and let the smell of fresh coffee meet me halfway. There were no texts, no cousin checking in, no aunt trying to talk sense. And for once, I didn't hope they'd reach out. This silence was mine. I moved through the house slowly, not to check for damage or intrusion, but to simply see what remained. The framed artwork I had once taken down now hung again. The rug had been cleaned. The scent of lemon and lavender was back, not to cover anything, but to invite peace in. Nothing had dramatically changed, but I had. Some battles don't end with applause. They end with breath. On the kitchen counter, I found the photo, the one of my parents. It had been missing after the party, and I hadn't thought much of it. Too much else to deal with. Now, it sat gently propped against the backsplash, as if waiting for permission to come back home. I picked it up, held it. For a moment, I considered putting it back on the mantel, like it had always been. Instead, I opened the drawer in my study and placed it inside. Not because I was angry, because I was done curating legacies that didn't include me. You don't heal by reinstalling the past. You heal by choosing where it no longer lives. Later that afternoon, I sat down with my laptop and pulled up a draft email I'd written to Tawny weeks ago. The subject line was still, "What you took." I read every word of it, not out of bitterness, but out of curiosity, wondering if I still needed any of it. I didn't. I wrote it in rage, I whispered. But I live now in stillness. Instead, I opened a new document, titled it, Closure. No greeting, no recipient. Just the facts. What had happened, what I learned, what I reclaimed. Not for anyone else's records, just mine. I printed it, folded it neatly, walked to my bedroom and opened the wooden box beneath my bed. Inside were letters, court receipts, a few photos I hadn't seen since the first hearing. I added the new paper to the pile. Then, for the first time, I locked it. Not to bury anything, but to protect what no longer needed to be reopened. Online, the world stayed quiet. No scandal, no reckoning, just silence. Some relatives still liked Tawny's posts. Some stayed publicly neutral. They could believe whatever helped them sleep. I believed in my reflection. Later, I walked into town. No music in my ears, no phone in my hand. A neighbor passed me on the sidewalk. An older man who used to jog past my villa each morning. He nodded, just once. That was enough. Closure doesn't always come from apologies. Sometimes it comes from refusing to need them. I sat by the beach, took out a notebook, Not the one for recording pain, but the one I kept for plans. I didn't write about the past. I wrote about what's next. It's time I build something not to prove them wrong, but to prove I don't owe them anything anymore. That evening, as I folded laundry, my hand brushed against the towel, the one from the beginning, embroidered with my mother's initials. I didn't cry. I folded it neatly and placed it in the cabinet, walked to the front door, locked it, whispered, not in anger, not with revenge in my chest, but with something that finally felt like peace. You don't live here anymore.